Hello and welcome to the first episode of Boxing Wishlist. For the next few weeks what I'll be doing is I'll be previewing several fights that we hope will happen in the next few years, maybe this year, next year, in the next few years in any weight division. So I sent out a on my blog a few days ago, and I sent it off to Boxing News 24. I got loads of responses, some great responses on fights that fans would want to see. So what is their boxing wish list? That's what I've called it, the boxing wish list, and got several replies, some great replies, some amazing fights that some I'd thought of myself, some that I'd never thought of in a million years, because there's some really good fights. And sadly I won't be able to preview all of them, but what I want to do is, it's not a proper preview, so don't get thinking I'm doing these fights are actually happening. Don't want to raise your hopes up too much, but hopefully most of them will happen. That's the hope of it for us. It's our wish list. There's plenty of fights there that probably will happen in the next few years. There's loads of fights that won't happen. But I thought what I'd do is, you see it in magazines and you see people, we do it all the time as boxing fans. We preview fights that aren't even made yet all the time because it's just a thing we do. We just enjoy doing it. So that's pretty much what I've done, and I've got probably over 100 fights that I could be previewing. I won't be previewing that many, but over the next few weeks, however long it takes, I'll just be doing a fight every couple of days, doing a preview on here. And so I hope you enjoy them. So the first one is the one that got the most votes by far, and that is the fight between Lucas Matthysse and Danny Garcia. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown on this fight. First of all, on Lucas Matthysse, he's 30 years old, coming 31 in September, so he'd most likely be 31 if they were to fight soon. Light welterweight, he's been a career light welterweight, so started then, is still there now. Never won a major world title, although he's been ranked. Won high ranking titles like interim titles, intercontinental titles with WBO, WBA and WBC. He stands at 5'6.5", has a 69-inch reach, from Argentina, and stands with a record of 34 wins and 2 defeats, and 32 wins coming by way of knockout. He's never been stopped. And to look at some of his fights, you go back a few years now. He turned professional back in 2004, and first really got himself onto the map with a victory over Vivian Harris just 3 years ago. Won that fight in 4 rounds. Then he suffered 2 defeats to both very good boxers, Zab Judah and Devin Alexander, both controversial split decision defeats. Those were. In between them he beat DeMarcus Corley in 8 rounds. Other fighters he's beat have been Humberto Soto, who retired after 5 rounds, knocked him down in that 5th round. Jose Olisigan, the British Nigerian, who he stopped in 10 rounds. Mike Dallas Jr. put up very little threat and knocked him out in 1 round. And the most impressive of all, in his last fight, if you remember, he beat Lamont Peterson in 3 rounds just last month. So that's the biggest career victory of his career thus far. And then to Danny Garcia, the number 1 light welterweight in the world. He's the WBC and WBA super light welterweight champion of the world. He's 26-0 with 16 knockouts. Stands slightly taller, 2 inches taller than Lucas Matthysse at 5'8.5", where he's got a shorter reach of 68.5 inches. 25 years of age, he's been 25 this year. He was born in March. He comes from Philadelphia in USA, and as you can look at some of his fights as well, turned pro 3 years later than Lucas Matthysse in 2007. Big fight, British fans will know Ashley Fairpain took him to a split decision, which Garcia won. Jorge Romero took him 9 rounds before Garcia's got a stoppage. Nate Campbell went the distance with him. Kendall Holt pushed it to a split decision, which he then got a shot in that after an eliminator against Eric Morales for the vacant WC title, and he won that in a comfortable 12 rounds points victory. And then in a shock last year, stopped Amir Khan in 4 rounds before stopping Eric Morales in 4 rounds in the rematch. And finally, earlier this year, he fought Zab Judah in a very tough fight. Got to give credit to Judah, he pushed him hard over those 12 rounds. It was most people expected a stoppage victory in Danny Garcia's favour, but Judah, despite a knockdown, fought well and lost on a close but unanimous decision. And that was his latest defence of both his titles. So, now to the obvious questions. The first one is, why should it happen? So that's the first question. For any fight, why should it happen? And this fight is quite simple of why it should happen. There's no doubt whatsoever that Matthysse and Garcia were their opponents they fought, and the way they've beaten some of their opponents, especially Amir Khan and Lamont Peterson, are two standout victories for both opponents respectively, is that they've both proved themselves to be the top 2 fighters in the light welterweight division. Now you could argue the only other 2 they haven't faced is Mike Alvarado and Brandon Rios, who, in all fairness, probably won't happen. It'll be 2 fights that, well, 4 fights they would love to see happen, but there's a likelihood they probably won't, because both Rios and Alvarado promoted by Top Rank, and we know the struggles that Top Rank and Golden Boy have had in the past in sorting out the top fights. So the likelihood of that happening is low. It could happen. We've seen them work together before. They have these rare occasions worked together and sorted out a fight. So we just gotta hope that happens in this case. But obviously, again, Brandon Rios moved up from lightweight not too long ago, and only really fought Alvarado, where he's won 1, lost 1. And Alvarado, same again, hasn't really fought at that top level, only against Brandon Rios, where he's 1-on-1. So there's no doubt that these 2 are the top fighters in the light welterweight division. Who's number 1? You can't really say. I'd say number 1 for me is vacant. Nobody's actually really proved. None of these 2 have proven themselves better than the other. So that's why this fight should happen. It's the 2 best fighters in the division, and that's what boxing wants to see. It wants to see the best versus the best. So there's no doubt this has to happen. Now, if it does happen, when and where? Now, where it would happen would, in my opinion, most likely the only obvious venue is the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, the home of Brooklyn Nets. Been a few fights there, especially for Danny Garcia. He actually fought his last 2 fights there. It seems to be a great venue like Philadelphia. Whether they'd want to put it in Philadelphia, I don't know. Maybe too biased towards Danny Garcia, too much home advantage, which I wouldn't want to do, Golden Boy, promoting both fighters. But, he's fought in Las Vegas as well, but I think this really suited to a fight in Brooklyn, where you could have the undercard with Peter Quillin, Daniel Jacobs, and maybe Paulie Malignaggi all on the undercard, and there'll be several other fighters. Could be another good card. Been plenty. There's supposed to be another one being called off for next month with Bernard Hopkins, Carol Marat, which has been sadly called off. So that's for me the most likely venue. When it'll happen, I say if it's going to happen, it's going to happen next. Really and truthfully, unless they can magically work together and get the fights with Rios and Alvarado, this will probably be for both fighters, or at least one of them, the last fight at the light welterweight weight class. So really and truthfully, this probably happens, I'd say, next fight November, December, end of the year, top fight. That seems the most logical choice of time to get this fight on. It's going to be a lot of build up, so November, December would be about the time this fight will happen. So now it's the ultimate question that comes up with every fight that's on somebody's boxing wish list and it's not happened yet when you're previewing it, and that is, will it happen? And simple answer is yes, this will happen. I'm 100% confident we'll get this fight. Matthysse has expressed, he wants this fight, he really wants this fight. Garcia and his father, Angel Garcia, have come out and said they'll fight anybody, which they have proved. In all fairness, they fought Amir Khan when the odds were stacked against them. He took the rematch with Eric Morales, even though it was in the rematch clause in all fairness. But even before that, you got to say, a few years earlier, Ashley Fairpain, he took him on. He took on Kendall Holt, who was always a dangerous opponent. So he hasn't exactly shied away from opposition, in all fairness to him. And now he took his chance against Khan, and now he's reaping the reward. So Golden Boy Promotions as well are very happy to have this fight. They want this to go ahead. Richard Schaefer has said, this is definitely going to be the next fight. So as long as they stick to the word, that's why it should happen as well. Both promoted by the same promoter. This is the way it usually happens. You look at Marquez versus Bradley happening later this year, and that's just like an example of when two fighters promoted by the same fighter, how these kind of super fights can happen. So really it should happen, and I honestly expect it to happen later this year. And now for keys to victory first. Now for Danny Garcia, this is quite difficult. This is a tough fight for him, a really tough fight. He's got to, for me, although not anybody will agree, I think he's got to get on the inside a lot here. He's got to get up close to Matthysse. Lucas Matthysse does very well from the outside. If you look at most of his knockouts, against, especially just lately, Soto was caught him from kind of the outside. Olusegun constantly backing up, and he kept catching him when he was backing up with long range right hands. Dallas Jr. caught him flush with a long range right hand, and same again with Peterson. So, look at the left hook that caught Peterson, that really took him out of his senses in the third round. That was a long range left hook, and that was a counter of one of Garcia's left hooks. So that's a key for Garcia. Don't be throwing left hooks from a long range, because Lucas Matthysse has got more power, and if he counters you, then it could be good night, like it was for Peterson in that fight just last month. So that's the key, I think, for Garcia. He's got to put the pressure right on Matthysse. Now, easier said than done, because Matthysse is such a hard puncher, but I think for a hard puncher like Matthysse, he's not going to be as effective with his punching inside. Could be wrong. I think really the fact is, if Garcia fights on the outside, he's not quick enough like Devin Alexander and Zab Judah were to box and circle Lucas Matthysse, so he's not going to be able to do that. So his only chance at winning really is get on the inside, rough it up a little bit, land short hooks and uppercuts, body shots, and just limit the power that Lucas can put into his right hand, because if you're standing just in range, and he's got the length, he can catch you, and that's the way he knocks his opponents out. He doesn't really knock opponents out by roughing them up on the inside and uppercuts, hooks on the inside. It's really just long range shots. So that's, I think, the tactic that Garcia's got to use to win this fight. And then for Matthysse, well, just do what he's been doing in recent fights. Back him up. If Garcia isn't going to try and fight on the inside, then it's Lucas's fight to lose. He's just got to back him up. Use Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia likes the jab. Use the jab as your rangefinder. Now, if he's just landing with a jab, you're in range, because you've got a longer reach advantage, practically the same, half an inch. But if he lands a jab, you're in range. So then you can counter with the right hand. So use the tactic for Lucas. Use Danny Garcia's jab to actively work out the range. He doesn't need his own jab in this case. Kind of use the right hand as his jab, but it's a lot more powerful than a normal jab anyway. And that's what he needs to do. Back him up. when Danny Garcia throws a left hook, throw your own, like he did against Peterson. Um, Head movement is going to be key for both fighters. They're going to have to create less of a target, especially Danny Garcia. Back to Danny Garcia, can't back up in straight lines. If he goes back in straight lines, he's just going to get knocked out. He's going to get caught several times on the ropes. He's got to move side to side, in and out. He's got to be a lot of movement to confuse and give lots of angles. Both fighters need to offer different angles for their opponents. Matthysse can offer different angles for Garcia. He won't get picked apart on the outside like he did against Alexander or Zab Judah, who cleverly just picked him apart. Although, in all fairness, I definitely believe he won the Alexander fight. I'm pretty certain he won that. So those are the keys to victory for both fighters. Now, as I say, most people won't agree that Danny Garcia should get on the inside, but I think that's maybe his only chance. Nobody's tried it before. Somebody's got to try it, haven't they? You know, you'd never know. If you get on the inside, you could catch him with a shot. You could limit his ability to land hard punches. So that's the key there. But overall, my prediction, there's no other way I can see it going apart from a Lucas Matthysse victory. I think even if Danny Garcia gets on the inside, he'll lose, but I think he'll have a better shot if he does get on the inside. But personally, I don't see Garcia taking those tactics. I see him trying to box him from the outside, trying to throw his left hook on many occasions, trying to counter with right hand as well. But I think Matthysse's power is just going to finally catch up with him. I think he's going to throw enough right hands to counter the left hook that eventually he'll catch him flush. And I think with a culmination of punches and pressuring from Matthysse, I think Lucas Matthysse will get the victory and probably a stoppage late on in the last quarter of the fight. So that's my prediction. I hope you enjoyed the preview. There will be plenty more coming up, so I hope you carry on listening and tune in again. And if you're watching this, if you're reading this from my article on my blog or on Boxing News 24, and I hope you leave some comments at the bottom. Same with YouTube listeners, please just leave some comments right at the bottom on your thoughts on the fight, what you think the two fighters have to do, and also whether you think this super fight will happen. But anyway, thanks for listening. I'll see you soon, guys.